Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Mad Realms Talking Skritt. I'm your host, Jim, and we have a fantastic show for you today. But like I had to do a lot of work before going into the show. Like there was a lot of extra stuff to go in, like a lot of stuff to stack up and get going. But before we get into that, first let's introduce our fellow host for the day. She writes over for MMORPG.com and other places, and I always forget everywhere you write whenever we talk about this. Say hello to Arlie.
Hello.
You,
Yay.
you'd think I'd
I mean, I was gonna say honestly, I mostly just write for MMORPG at this point,
Okay.
so it's fine.
Well, then I can shorten the list and actually remember it next time. So,
Yay.
and special guest this week, professional tabletop game master, 7-Bit Brian.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me on. I am. It feels weird because I've been watching this podcast since 2014, and now I'm a guest all of a sudden. So yeah.
I'm sorry, what?
Yes, yes. This podcast started in 2014. Do you remember?
Oh my god.
It's been 7 fucking years?
No, I think it was. No, I don't think it's been 7 years yet because you guys were November or December that it started, if I remember right.
Something like that. Almost 7 years though.
Oh, God. Excuse me while I shrivel into dust.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I've been watching since the first.
Yes,
I
you
didn't
have.
watch all of them live because, I'm busy, life, work, things like that. But I've technically watched every single episode of this podcast.
That's awesome.
Yes, episode 1, Our Raids Coming to Guild Wars 2, November 15th, 2014.
Our raids. Wow.
That's why when people ask for content creators, I'm like, why don't you
Yeah.
go watch the longest running Guild Wars 2 podcast ever? Because, before this, it would have been Guild Chat, but then Guild Chat
Mhm.
ended when Ruby left and actually joined
Ruby and
ArenaNet,
Elixabeth. Yeah.
and Elixabeth, yeah. And then, now you guys have surpassed even how long they were going on. They're like, yeah,
How the hell are we the longest running Guild Wars 2 content?
We
You're
even
great,
took a break
man.
for a little bit.
yeah, you have taken breaks and stuff here and there, but that's fine. Like that's
Mhm.
Oh, God, that just feels weird to think about. So, let's not think about it and move on to the first topic. We had a patch this week.
Woo!
Um,
I'd say.
we had a patch. It's the Festival of the Four Winds, which means the Labyrinthine Cliffs are open again. And also the Queen's Pavilion boss rush is now open again. So, remember, you have to kill Boom Boom Bane's turret or it will heal her to full.
Nah.
Don't listen to Arlie. That's the second rule is you don't listen to Arlie during the boss rush. But we have a few extra rewards, new achievements. Sorry, the last thing I saw here at the very end, this is World Polish. A new achievement, the Gold Claw Holiday Collection, has been added to encourage the discovery of hidden series of festival-themed novels, each available only during their associated festival. Snargle Goldclaw writes holiday romance.
Yay.
yes,
We
this
should
is
do theatrical readings of his books sometime.
this is another one of those like long-term commitment time gated achievements like they did the drinking collection where you tried the brew of the month and stuff like that. I actually really enjoy them. I think they're just fun little things, easy things to add to the game. But I know there's some people that are just like upset, not really upset, but like memeing upset about it when you have players like DeRoyer who, they have every achievement and now they're time gated out of getting all of these achievements for a year.
Yeah.
He's just like, damn it.
Like I revert to my old man internet reactions where it's the guy on the beach doing the jack off emotion or the jack off motion as the like who cares. But
yeah, like I said, they're not really upset about it.
Yeah.
They're just jokingly,
It's
but it's just funny.
I still remember missing out on my Violet Proto Drake for the holiday stuff in WoW because I couldn't get candy hearts to drop for Valentine's
Aw.
Day. Yeah. And then they removed that achievement from being one of the requirements the year after I needed it. Thanks, Blizzard. But I'm sure a lot of people can say thanks, Blizzard, in that kind of tone lately. But completely different game.
Back to the festival. So the boss rush in the Queen's Pavilion is what happens on the bottom floor where everybody goes down in the different quadrants and kills boss.
Yes.
But upstairs,
That's
there's
right.
the forget what it's called.
I can't remember what it is either.
Killing more bosses
Yeah,
in
it's
the
the
thing, and people
one-on-one
can watch
stuff.
you
Yeah.
do it. That's fun. God,
Yeah,
I
I
can't
can't
remember
remember
what
it
that's
either.
called.
Queen's Gauntlet.
Queen's Gauntlet. Thank you. Which
Thank
is
you.
really funny because I was playing earlier today and going through and organizing my bank sum and cleaning up my inventory on my elementalist, and I noticed I had like 20 Queen's Gauntlet tickets left over from like probably 2 or 3 years ago at this point. And I was looking at him, I was like, oh, I need to remember when that's going on again so I can go use those tickets. And totally forgetting that it is actually going on now.
I actually think there's something really unique about the Queen's Gauntlet that a lot of people don't think about. Like
Hmm.
most things like this in this game and other games, you just queue into like your own little private instances of this and do it. But this, it's not that, you know, like when you're challenging this boss, you are challenging it and no one else can go in until you're done. So people
Yeah.
have started to form like lines and like a community around it, like spectating and watching. And it's actually pretty
Hmm.
unique and interesting. I just wanted to point that out. I think that's kind of
Yeah.
cool.
I can't remember if this happened first or WoW had the Brawlers Guild first, but it's kind of the same thing. Where there's an area you queue in and you go in and everybody else can watch you fight, but nobody else can help you. Although the WoW has certain ones where their team and everybody who's there waiting just randomly gets pulled in to do some fights, which is crazy. Um,
I
but
desperately wish it was easier to see. Like I wish the design of the
uh-huh.
arena let you be like up against the arena itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, if they like turned the arena into like a dome and then like built some like bleachers around it so people could actually get up, that would be pretty cool, yeah.
And then you
Right.
would get credit for sitting in another chair.
Oh.
See? Thinking long term.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, because
But
they could add a holiday-only version of the Queen's Gauntlet bench to that
yep.
achievement. And then the
I
people who already have that achievement would be like, but I did the achievement. But now there's a
mhm.
blank thing on it.
Now you do it again.
Yeah, I did all of them and it's fun, but at this point I mostly honestly just like going and watching other people fight it and do it. Like
I need to finish it. I don't think I
fun.
ever finished it.
I don't think I've finished all the achievements in there either. I have to go in and get a few, but you know, it's not something I'm stressing over. I can if I do it this year, great. If not, I'll
Well,
next year or the year after.
I
No, you
think
got to do it
I think
now.
one of my biggest problems is the fact that I play two of the squishiest classes in the game.
Hey, I did
So,
it on Elementalist, so
well, maybe I can do it using your build. Maybe.
I'm not. My build doesn't make you not squishy. Just so
I'm
you're
fully
Just
aware
wait
of
aware.
that.
wait until next year when End of Dragons is out and you can play Harbinger and you can play like
Mm.
a celestial Harbinger with minions and literally you just spam one and can't die because you get passive healing and passive barrier generation from doing that. It's just boom boom. It's literally as long as you're using abilities and moving, I don't think you can
Oh
actually
wait,
die in PvE.
I do remember you saying you made a celestial harbinger. That's
Hmm.
bonkers. I wonder how well that would work in like
I mean,
WW or
it doesn't
something.
do a ton of damage, so it is balanced that like it's going
But
to take you forever to kill something. But I think like as long as you're actively pressing buttons and moving, you cannot die in that build.
Well, there are a couple of fights that do have one-shot mechanics, though. So
True.
you would
Yeah,
have to
that's
watch out for those. But yeah.
but other than that, like there's one big thing that I rather
Hmm.
like in this is that the
What?
Twisted Marionette public mode is back.
Yay!
Every
Will they
yes,
two
do that
hours,
still?
every two
sorry, go ahead.
hours, the Mist Stranger will call for adventurers to face the terrifying marionette. There have been changes made to public mode. The entry point has been moved from the scrying pool to the Mist Stranger's new location in the main hall. The public version, the event will not start until there are 50 or more players on the map. In the private version, the event will not begin until the squad leader instructs the Mist Stranger, located near the center waypoint, to start the battle. Fixed a bug that caused the Inspire skill, which is available to players who defeated their platform's warden, to not revive down players on the other platforms, as its description states. Oh, that's cool. Relocated the map exit points in the Twisted Marionette encounter to be farther out from waypoints to avoid accidental selection of the exit.
Ooh.
Maps with a public version, such as the Twisted Marionette, Dragonstorm, and Dragon Response missions, will now return players to the map they entered from if they log out while in the map. Good.
Okay.
New achievement, the gold. That's the new achievement for the Gold Claw Holiday Collection. So
Yeah.
got a little ahead of things on that, but yeah, Twisted Marionette is back and permanently, publicly.
And some of the problems that everybody had with it are now fixed. It is much improved. I think a lot of people I saw like one Reddit thread or like one tweet about this, and that's it. And I'm like, people are overlooking this. This is good.
I'm just happy to see it back. I loved the fight the first time it came out, and I remember doing the one run of it I did when the public was out earlier, and it was like I was transported to all of those years ago because it was the exact same problems in map chat.
Yep.
The exact same yelling at each other.
It was exactly the same, and
Yeah.
I kind of remember sitting there like, this is awful. I love it.
Yeah, that was one of the things that amused me, like on Twitter, with people complaining about people being like that, and I'm like, what did you expect? That's exactly what it was before. Like, they have recreated the experience.
So this is normal.
I think there may be one thing that comes from this that may be kind of not the greatest experience, but I think it's inevitable. Because you weren't going to have the greatest experience anyways, is that, let's say I'm playing at like 4 a.m. because that's just when I can play and there's not a lot of people on, and Twisted...
Oh, crap.
Eventually going to be a timeout where it just stops and kicks everybody out. But you were likely going to have a horrible experience had you tried to go through with that anyways.
Right.
Like, without the amount of players, you weren't going to beat it anyways, so...
Did we stop streaming for a second when you went away, or no?
No, I misclicked and left the call.
Ah, that's what happened.
I just kept going because I wasn't sure what happened, so I just kept talking.
Very professional of you.
Good job.
The stream did hear me yell, "Oh crap," because
But
they get my direct voice line from the mic in OBS.
Doing it live, folks. But yeah, I do see a scenario where some people are going to try to join, and there'll be like 15, 20 people that are sat around for a while, and then the instance is just going to time out and kick them out, and it's going to feel kind of crappy. But had they started it with that many people, it would have felt even worse. So I think it's unavoidable.
Well, and also that's going to become an issue as we move further away from it being a new thing, because there will be a drop-off, just the natural drop-off, people looking to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be one of those things that, depending on times of day, you're always going to find great groups because you can get money from it and drops and things, just like Dragonstorm. But yes, it's definitely it's going to have that drop off and be not as popular as it was, just like Dragonstorm. You go to Dragonstorm certain times a day now, and it's actually extremely hard to complete. You go to at other times a day, and you can literally do nothing and win.
Which is really surprising because Dragonstorm is a shockingly lucrative map. It's just so easy. It's just like going back to Dragonstand. Is like you can literally just sit in the map and just rake in everything. It's so great.
Although I was gonna say, in fairness, I've only done the whole thing once, Dragonstorm. So
I've done it a couple of times, if only because it was something that was nice to jump in during like quarantine last year.
Yeah, for me, for some reason, it's just not something I think of very often.
Yeah.
But we should probably do Marionette on Tuesday.
Okay. That sounds like a great plan. We can make it a thing and plan it in chat or in the Discord and actually try and make a community thing of it. And then maybe after that we'll do guild missions just for old time's sake. Go
really
real,
walk through history.
Go real core Guild Wars 2 for that night.
I miss guild missions. They're very unique in Guild Wars 2. Like, not a lot of games have something like that. I wish they'd make some more. Just, give me some Pacifier guild missions or something.
Especially, I wish there were more of the races. Like, as frustrating as those were at certain points, like, they were so much fun. I really liked the races.
But do we have there's a whole big elephant that I'm not talking about from these patch notes because that's going to be the back half of the show and it's a big deal. But is there anything else from the patch notes that from Labyrinthine Cliffs or the Queen's Jubilee or anything, or Marionette coming back that you guys want to talk about? Because I think the next thing I want to talk about is that lovely Twitter image that we got. So we good?
I don't have anything.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay, well then it's time to fight. Because it's probably a warrior.
What?
I did not put 7-Bit's picture here. It's fine. The picture is there. I'm like, God damn it! I'm going to put the picture on.
Smaller.
We got the teaser here. We're doing it live. Teaser here for the warrior. I'll just stick this in No, not in assets. It can't go in assets because assets is below even cameras.
Well, like, I was gonna say, have they confirmed it's 100% definitely warrior?
Well, no, they haven't. But the colors have been on point. And this is the color behind everything when you this is the color behind a warrior when you choose a warrior in character creation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the colors and the race selection have all been matching.
Consistent.
You know, like consistently matching. And this silhouette seems to match all of that as well. I think it's definitely going to be warrior. And then pair that with something that a dev has said. It makes me think this is definitely warrior because everybody's flipping out about this. And it looks very, I think it's definitely warrior.
So
yeah.
I'm looking at this, and obviously they're showing us that it looks like a sword, but we know warrior already has both main and offhand sword. So in my head, that means we've got one of two things: is either A, the actual model is a fake out, and that's a pistol. Because we've got the bullets on the gauntlets. Or they're doing that thing I thought would be a good idea with elite specs, especially for warrior who already has a lot of weapons, where they take an existing weapon set and change it.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm going with it. Especially since they've got like if you look at the top of the gauntlet holding the sheath, it looks like there's literal gauntlet barrels, or you can punch someone and then shoot them with the gauntlet.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was funny, because a lot of people are saying various kind of weapon and gunblade and stuff, but it was funny to me because when I looked at that, the first thing I thought of was samurai, just because of the stance, the way he's holding the apparent scabbard, and the texture on those kind of gloves is very similar to kind of texture that I've seen on samurai armor. So I don't know how that would fit because, again, like you said, they do have sword on both offhand and mayhand already, so it wouldn't make sense. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's either one of the things you just said, Malthanis. I think they're going very there was a developer quote where he said that, he's really interested to see people, I forget which one it was. It was like a reply on Reddit or Twitter or something like that. But he said he's really interested to see what people think of the warrior because he doesn't think anybody is going to be able to guess what they're doing with warrior this time. This was before this silhouette and everything came out because it was apparently they were doing something extremely unique. So looking at that looks like a Norn silhouette wearing the heavy armor draconic set, right? So that makes me think warrior with the colors. And then looking at everything involved, the warrior currently does not have access to a pistol.
Yes.
One of the elite spec icons is like a little bullet with flares around it, and a lot of the warrior elite spec icons have had similar flares. So I think that's this. I think warrior. Here's my crackpot theory. I think warrior is going to get an offhand pistol. I think their pistol is going to be mostly used as melee or maybe a mixture of medium range with it. But I think that's not where any of this comes into play. I think what we're seeing in the silhouette is the F1 skill. I think the F1 skill is going to be a fusion of sorts. So you have your pistol and you have your main hand being an axe, right? And then you press your F1 skill and now you have a shotgun X. where you have your pistol in your main hand being a sword. Press F1 skill, you have a gunblade, and it's just a series of skills, kind of like the Hollowsmith, photon forge. You get a series of skills based on what is in your main hand by using this F1 skill.
That's interesting. Yeah.
It would be a lot of work, but it would be something that is very, very unique and different that would make it stand out. And, and then all of the, oh, wow. Utility. I just drew a blank on the word. Utility skills could be around probably like different, like, I don't know, like you punch someone and it blasts them backwards, things like that, based around those gauntlets and some other items. But I think it's going to be warrior, it's going to be bullet or pistol focused, and it's just going to be like combining the weapons. That's my crackpot theory.
Warriors get tricks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
as a weapon
there you go.
skill, or as a utility skill. I saw, like, what was it? Hat was saying kits for warrior. I don't know, like, they have yet to give kits out, like, as a utility skill type to anyone other than engineer.
Breaking convention.
That could be another way to do this. Maybe the F1 is still adrenaline or whatever, but the utility skills are all kits, and that's how you get your gun blade and other type, gun weapons. You can get a gun blade, a shotgun axe, like breach mace, stuff like that. All these fantasy weapons that fit into Guild Wars 2, but we haven't seen in Guild Wars 2 yet.
Now I just want the boom hammer from Bloodborne. I hit you with explosions. Nothing wrong with that. But, yeah, I'm interested to see where this is going. Especially, like, what kind of build this is. The one thing that I like, the niche that I think a warrior misses is a warrior does not have a ranged spec. Like, a warrior does not have, like, they have solid ranged weapons.
I think back, what is it, like beginning of our Heart of Thorns or like right before our Heart of Thorns longbow specs, we had a few that were viable, but since then, we don't really have a good range spec. You're right.
So it's like, right. Well, Zach, I use rifle on warrior. I love rifle on warrior, but everything else in a warrior's kit wants you to be in.
Yeah, rifle and longbow work on warrior, especially in different scenarios, but there isn't a spec built around it.
Yeah, there's nothing like, because there's so many warrior stuff that's built on taking hits, on weapon swapping, on hitting, but like it's all bonuses. Like you have to be in, because all of the utilities, like all the physical skills, are based on either doing stuff while in or getting to targets. Berserker skills, the rage skills, are all melee, relative or short range.
This actually is. I was gonna say I'm agreeing with you. This actually brings up when the last big balance patch happened and they affected warrior. They did some tweaks to rifle to like make it pierce and do other things, and people were like, "Well, this is crap. This doesn't do anything to give us an actual range spec." But they were doing all that with these new elite specs in mind, prepping for it. So possibly that plays into this elite spec, and they're expecting people to use that rifle trait and those rifle skills with this spec. So we have to start thinking about that.
Yeah. But I like the changes to rifle. The rifle changes were solid. But that's the niche that I'm seeing here that warrior is missing. Is like there's no range spec. And also, I don't know enough about Cantha to really like guess on that, but like the influences of Cantha, I know a little bit about, and I know rifle was a thing that the samurai used a great deal as things were winding down for like the era.
Yeah, samurais actually had their own like special rifle that they made.
It does. I am getting some Deadshot vibes too, ZeKrioX. You're not wrong. Especially the gauntlet. It's just I don't know how many people are going to make Will Smith look-alike warrior characters now. I would legitimately pay DC and Warner Brothers to make a Deadshot movie with Will Smith. Like there were so many good movies just kind of tangled up in Suicide Squad, the original one at least. But that's an after show thing to talk about. So if this is our warrior, and I missed that thing with the dev saying you'll never guess it. So that leads to, you know, what are they going to do to wildly affect the class mechanics? So this is the burst skills, the rage skills, or not the rage skills, the burst skills. I was right with the adrenaline bar. Now I think farther back, ZeKrioX said adrenaline as ammo, which would be interesting if it was borrowing from, say, the Thief UI. So you have your initiative, but instead of initiative always being full, it starts out empty. And your pips are your ammo.
Yeah, that could be very interesting, and it could play off like, you know, you have your main hand sword, and you have to run in and build up adrenaline so that, you know, you can then bounce back out and fire your shots with your pistol using that adrenaline, because they each cost a different amount of adrenaline. And it's a balance of like going in and out and balancing it back and forth. That could be very interesting, yes.
It makes me wonder what they're going to do with, like, I don't know what they would do with the with the F1 skills, because like I don't know if they want to redesign, like, because for Spellbreaker they just said you only get 1 bar of adrenaline, and then you also have full counter. With Berserker they gave every weapon a new burst skill. So I don't know if they're going to want to give every weapon a new burst skill to go along with this.
Yeah, I think maybe their way of breaking convention this time is not doing that. You have the pistol; it has a new burst skill, right?
Right.
That's it. Right? Just, and then you can either use adrenaline or the burst skill.
Well,
but then the what makes it unique is, you know, the utilities that are kind of like kits or something. And then while you're in your kit, you don't have access to that.
well, Spellbreaker, you only get a bar of adrenaline for your burst skill, and then you have a second. Don't you have a second bar for full counter? I can't remember. It's been so long since I played my warrior, which is a shame because I used to play a crap ton on my warrior. But yeah, you're right. Berserker only has you can only do 1 burst, and you have to fill the bar, but it's just faster for them, I guess.
I guess some of this also really comes down to, do you think the pistol is going to be offhand, main hand, or both? Because they've given Warrior both in an elite spec and just an offhand in an elite spec. So what are they going to do this time?
Yeah. Okay, Hat, thanks. I had forgotten about that. Yeah, so I don't know. Like, I don't know if it would depend entirely on the theming of the spec, because I don't know if they'd want to support like a dual pistol warrior thing with the art that they're giving us here.
Right. Yeah, I think it's conceptually more interesting if it's like a single pistol, and I think it would work better with an offhand, but that's just me personally. I don't know how everyone else feels.
Yeah, it definitely, like, I think even thematically, if we want to go rule of cool here, and we're talking about like East Asian influences and other kind, like if you look in like martial arts movies effectively, it would be more interesting to watch someone with a main hand sword and offhand pistol do crazy flippy bullshit and trick shots and stuff. So,
and correct me if I'm wrong, all these concepts we're talking about, like a gunblade and things like that, those are like anime and East Asian influenced things as well. Like that's where they came from. So and Kantha isn't just, you know, China or Japan or Korea. It's a big mix and blend of all of that with a lot of uniqueness thrown in. And it's supposed to be technologically advanced. So
see, you know, now that you've mentioned it, I really want it to be the fusion thing. Like, my brain has glommed onto that.
Yeah, I think that would be a really interesting concept. Yeah, it would be them having to put in quite a few skills. But they've done that before, like all the skills that they had to make for Elementalists when they did Elite Spec and stuff. They've had some where they had to make a lot more than others, and it would just make it so unique and different than anything the warrior has right now, than anything in the game right now. Let's be honest.
So what you're saying is your fusion idea is every weapon becomes much like ZeKrioX brought up Ruby earlier in chat, as every warrior weapon would then become some kind of weapon plus gun unique to that weapon type.
No, technically you only have to do it with 3 because it's just your main hand weapon that's becoming that, right? So axe, mace, sword.
Great sword, hammer.
Yeah, but you don't have an offhand with a great sword. It's only things that you can
True,
have
but I guess if this is the F1, you'd be able to go into that. So yes, I guess it would be axe, mace, sword, great sword, hammer, longbow, rifle. It would be those. But I think they've done that many skills before. So
what if the rifle it's a gun that shoots other guns? I love the dead silence I'm getting here.
I was reading King Pirate's
yeah, the draw there from that stance would be with the blade facing up. For that particular Gatling gun. Yeah. Well, we already have those. Those are like half the like original rifle skins had rotating barrels on them.
Yeah, so like a limited time type fusion type thing where like kind of like the photon forge for Hollowsmith.
Mm-hmm.
Except, there's ways to extend that and make it last longer and, stick around in it. This would just be you go into it and you have to unleash everything as fast as possible as the timer just automatically drops.
That would effectively be like the Firebrand with the Virtue Tomes.
I think the Virtue Tomes, you can technically be in it as long as you want.
Yeah.
Well, I guess but you just have to use so many skills. I think this would be less that and more of a timer and whatever skills you can get off within that timer. And maybe the timer is based on the adrenaline charges.
Yeah. It's just, it's, I suppose it's one of the things that, like, this is the issue I've always had with Warrior, is the fact that it's technically the quote-unquote most boring class in literally any RPG. Mm-hmm. Because the Warrior is he's the guy with a sword. Well, does he do fancy stuff with it? No, he's just really good at swinging a sword. Can you give me more than that? No.
I think that's a design issue with a lot of people, and it's a argument we get in a lot in my sphere in the tabletop game where people talk about linear warriors and quadratic wizards, where like by the late in game warriors are just kind of like I swing a sword, I swing a sword, but that's a misunderstanding of design, and that can be solved.
Yeah.
Because by end game, you're not just a knight, you're Hercules.
Yeah.
And if you didn't design it that way, that's a failure on your design, not on the fantasy and what can be possible.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things where like you have the warrior who is strength and skill with a sword means he can literally cut a mountain in half, kind of stuff. It's like there's no way he could physically, like the sword does not reach that, but he has such strength and skill and speed that literally the act of him drawing and striking with the sword splits the mountain. And I think they did a really good job with selling that with the Berserker in Guild Wars 2, because like a lot of the animations show like the cracking rock beneath you and that kind of stuff. I think that's an issue with Spellbreaker. Well, Spellbreaker didn't feel very like visceral in its implementation.
I can see that, yeah. I think Guild Wars 2 has done a pretty good idea of conceptually and keeping the warrior up with, like, it's believable that a warrior and an elementalist in this game can fight one another and fight each other to a stalemate and do good against one another. And other games, like in World of Warcraft, the way they portray wizard or mages in that game, in the lore, it's not very believable that a warrior in that game can go up against a mage and really do a whole lot. It's more believable in Guild Wars 2. I think they've done a pretty good job of that design balance.
Yeah. That, and even from a gameplay standpoint, the burst attacks, I think, are some of the high, like, it is well designed to be a high point, which is one of the reasons like I'm super interested to see what they do with the burst skills for whatever the End of Dragons Warrior Elite spec is, because the burst skills are all like full counter broke the game. Like full counter broke PvP so hard. There were so many, like, I want to say full counter was probably the reason they did the power coefficient nerfing in PvP for the most part, because full counter was killing people, which I thought was hilarious. But I like this fusion idea, especially the idea of like a shotgun axe or something like that.
Yeah, I think it could be really conceptually very like unique and interesting. But it definitely would be, a lot of work. So I'm not sure. Tertiary to this, I don't mean to change the subject, but it's kind of on subject since we have a pause in the discussion here for a moment. Tertiary to this discussion, if you go to the Guild Wars 2 End of Dragons website where it shows all the features and everything that's happened, they have the silhouettes for all the, or not the silhouettes, the symbols for all the different elite specs, right?
Yeah.
And when they revealed the Harbinger and the Willbender, they then put it with the Virtuoso all the way over to the left and reordered all of those, right?
Yep.
They're now in a new order, and everybody theorized, oh, this is the order we're going to get them in. I think that theory has now been broken.
Yes.
Because if we look at the order that they're in, it doesn't match.
Yeah, because the bullet, which, I mean, the shell on the gauntlets looks exactly like the bullet in the one icon with, like, the spiral and the two lines coming from it. Like, that's third from the end. So, and I have no idea what I'm guessing we're assuming it's Revenant, the one that was released last week.
Yeah, we're assuming that was Revenant, and I think it's the one right beside the bullet, because it has the Revenant eye.
The spiky eye looking thing, yeah.
Yeah, so I think those two means that this is not the order we're getting them in. But I'm curious what's next. My bet is either Thief or Ranger is what they're going to reveal next.
Gotta make me wait until the last one for my Elementalist.
I just think Elementalist and I think Engineer are going to be last. I just really think they're going to be last. I really want the Engineer. Like, that has been my main class since day one of Guild Wars 2, since like the early access. But I think it's going to be last.
Yeah. Well, I'm not surprised that Engineer and Elementalist would show up last, because I feel like those are not necessarily from a mechanics standpoint, but from just a sheer number of things to change standpoint, are the most complicated. I'm not seeing a theme yet, Pink Pirate. Like, I'm not seeing a theme in the releases here.
He could be totally right. There could be a theme, but yeah, I'm not seeing it either.
Like, yeah, I'm full. Like, I agree with 7-Bit in that, you might be right. I don't know what it is, which it doesn't really help us.
It was 2 lights and then a heavy, right? And this could be the only theme I could say is if that's Revenant and Warrior, that's 2 heavies, and then you add in a light, and then you're just left with all the medium classes being last.
Well,
but that would feel kind of crappy. Like, I feel like you have to reveal a medium class this time along.
Yeah. Well, they were saying up farther up in chat where it would be light, media. What was it? It was Virtuoso, Harbinger, and it was light, heavy, then heavy, medium, and then medium, light.
I guess you could do that, yeah.
But I don't know. Like, I still have no idea if they're actually going to be like doing anything on theme here. But either way, like, I think it's going to be funny to me. But like, you can't use those gauntlets would look great on an Engineer. You're not going to be able to use them on an Engineer. And I can tell that there's going to be a whole lot of Engineers who would just be very sad by that.
I mean, I'm more upset that I can't use that sword on my Engineer, but okay.
Well, you can on your Hollowsmith, because they get sword main hand.
Well, yeah, I guess I'll be able to get. I, I don't think the skin's gonna look like that. It'll look similar to that, but it won't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or if that's a fusion thing, then no, it's not going to be a skin that anybody can get.
Yeah, because it'll be a class mechanic, not a skin. Well, about that, because you can get all of the elementalist summoned weapons as weapon skins. So if they added like a class mechanic that created weapons like this, there
And then
is,
you put them as like collections or rare drops out there. Yeah, that would be interesting.
because I think all the elementalist stuff are Mystic Forge stuff. I want to say, but I can't remember specifically. But yeah, I don't know. Like I'm excited. Like I like Warrior. I've always liked Warrior. My Warrior is my go-to like chill farm character. I'm hoping it's not a Condi class because I'm in full Marauder and I'm far too lazy to build out yet another gear set until I get all of my legendary stuff. But I'm looking forward to this. So
Yeah, I was thinking that along that side, like when we think like power, condition, support, things like that. Like Warrior's kind of good on all that. I think maybe this one would lead more into like control and CC. I'm not sure. Like, what are they really missing when it
well,
comes to that?
Spellbreaker is control and CC for
Yeah,
when
you're
you
right.
need
So
it.
yeah, they're not really missing anything thematically and for all of that. So
I
this
mean,
could go anyway.
the an honest to god healer spec. Like that's and I know
Gun
that.
healer.
Well, the thing is, like, I remember Rift did it, and it was with like gravity magic.
I think that would be very interesting. I don't think that's going to be this one.
Yeah, it's not.
Here's my reasoning. The silhouette doesn't match, and two, I had a discussion with Age on his stream, and we were talking about Thief, and we think Thief is due for a support slash healing spec. I think that's what Thief is getting,
Okay.
and it's going to be based around like you do damage to heal your allies and stuff
So
like that.
the Chloromancer coming in. Got it. I'm
We
interested.
were kind of like theorizing and speculating on his stream about it, and it was just a really interesting concept. And just based on this silhouette and everything we've seen so far, I don't think it could be good for
That's
Warrior, but it could fit Thief this time around.
Yeah, I'm not expecting a healer, but like that's the only niche I can think. Like the only two niches that Warrior is truly missing because they definitely get AoE boons because Phalanx strength, like party wide might is just like Warrior is the poster child for that.
ZeKrioX, you joke, but isn't there a person in Overwatch that literally shoots healing bullets at people?
Ana,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, so
There's also
it could happen.
in SWOTOR the
Wait.
smuggler.
Guild
that.
Wars 2, like the old elixir gun. You literally shot, like
Yeah. Although that an elixir gun sounds more of an engineer like well it literally is an engineer thing, but I don't like Warrior is missing an actual range DPS, a range spec, and also like a support healer. Because all of Warrior support comes through damage at this point.
so. Yeah, I think betting on ranged is a good bet. Do you think it would be power or condition ranged?
I don't know. Like it's difficult. Like I could see burns coming through on this, especially since it like the glow coming out of the scabbard there, like some kind of molten stuff. So I could see burning coming out of this if they want to do Condi damage. But Warrior does tend to lend itself better to power.
Yeah, I think if we had seen some balance changes to the warrior longbow, it would make me think condition because that's more of a condition weapon.
Yeah.
But the fact that we saw those changes to the rifle makes me think it'll probably be a power based range build.
Yeah.
And I also don't think it's going to be like all ranged. I think you're going to have to get into some melee.
Well, I mean, so much of Warrior is already based on being in melee, so I think it's going to be very difficult to make a Warrior spec that doesn't want like you'd be playing a Warrior at 80% at best if you didn't go into melee at some point. So, but any further thoughts on our Warrior silhouette before we move to the elephant from the patch notes?
I don't have anything.
Okay.
It's really awesome art that a lot of people engage with. I just want to put that out there.
Yes. I think all of them have been, which is a great thing.
I agree, all of them have been, but this one just kind of stood out. Like everybody flipped out about this one.
I think it's dynamic without actually being a dynamic pose.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of promise of action in this posture and this stance. I like it. Like it's a very solid piece of art.
Well, I think the promise of action is kind of ingrained, especially from watching like anime and stuff with things like they'll go like that right before like a big attack or something. So
Yeah, it's the classic samurai pose where you're just holding, waiting for them to come at you.
Yeah.
We'll do.
And the color scheme is also classic Guild Wars 2, like vanilla Guild Wars 2 color scheme. Look at that, that red behind that is vanilla Guild Wars 2 color scheme.
It's the watercolor and like
that,
the brush stroke. Yeah,
that on the white is just bringing that back for everybody, even if they're not recognizing it. They're getting that.
Once again, we are well and truly in the all-star reunion tour of Guild Wars 2. We're even bringing back the old art style for things. Now they just need to bring back the talky cutscenes, right?
Yes.
I actually really enjoyed
those.
Yeah, I really enjoyed those. I get why some people didn't, and there is something to be said about the story playing out around you rather than just in front of you. And it is definitely immersive, but there was a certain charm to those that I really enjoyed, yes.
Yeah, I always really liked them.
But we had a promise of action. Boy, was there a promise of action to make people act less.
Yay!
So the last thing, I'm gonna go back to the 4-box because we don't need to look at the Warrior anymore. It's too much action. We need fewer actions right now. One of the big parts from the patch notes was as follows: to improve the stability of the game, performing any of the following actions will reset your status, removing ongoing skill effects such as damaging area effects, traps, preparations, missiles, and many boons and profession-specific enhancements. This process will clean up many possible broken states in which a skill effect could be present when it should not have been. Some of these states cause duplication of performance-intensive skills such as traps, which degraded server performance for everyone. The actions that trigger the skill cleanup include the following: swapping your build template, swapping your equipment template, changing specializations, changing traits, changing items equipped in a weapon slot via the hero panel, respawning after defeated. However, there was an update to this.
Can I just say real quick before the update that to me, all of those things, it just by default makes sense why that would restate your scent. Like if you're building something, like that seems to be the default of what you would start with.
Yeah.
Like I understand it didn't always work that way in Guild Wars 2, but it just made sense that it would work that way.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? Before we get to the updates, because a lot of the updates, the update came out after a lot of community discussion. So, 7-bit, I know the thing the initial thing I heard about this was when you were talking about when you were on Tea Time about this, talking to Teapot. So,
I wasn't on Tea Time.
Oh, it wasn't Tea Time.
I was just in his stream.
In his stream.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, I was just talking with in chat, and yeah, it was interesting. This concept brought out a side of the community that I'm not the happiest with, and it's not hardcore players, it's not casual players, it's people from both sides showing not the greatest face on this. But yeah, this, from a designer's point of view, this was an unintended effect in the game, right? That for some players added a fluidity to what they wanted to do. For a lot of some people, and it was very interesting to play with, and like for speed running and things like that. It could enable you to do a lot of things, but it was an unintended effect, one they didn't originally mean to have. And it was affecting the stability of the game. Now, a lot of people took this as like, oh, this is causing server lag or something. No, they're not talking about lag. That's a different thing. And there was a lot of people discussing about like, well, how much of an effect can this have? It was only a small part of the community. That's not quite how this works. I'll get into that later. What I want to discuss now is, from a designer point of view, this was something that had been in the game for a very long time, but when they added build templates, it compounded that issue. It made it worse than it had been. It over doubled what, the effect that it was having on the game. And ArenaNet decided, okay, now's the time that I want to go in and I want to fix this. The fix they did was the simplest and easiest fix. Since then, we've gotten an update where they've made a compromise. This compromise is much more complicated of a fix, but, is a compromise that I think the community is going to be happy with. Because there were certain unintended effects. While, yes, this was originally an unintended effect, we didn't expect for this to happen. It did happen, but it wasn't a bad effect. Some of these unintended effects are bad. They have an effect on, the stability of the game, as well as like just the integrity of my mechanics that I've designed, but some of them not so much. So the easiest fix got rid of the ones that were not a big deal. They didn't really break anything, right? So they're going to roll that back and make the harder fix now. But I completely understand from a designer's point of view why they did what they did, and, why this was their first choice. And I think it's not like a lot of people like, how could you not know this? It's very simple why they wanted to do it this way first. And I think it's them going above and beyond, rolling back and doing it this harder way. I think that's actually commendable.
So to kind of spell out what exactly, for anybody watching who's not familiar with, like, because this is something that was primarily occurring in like more bleeding edge PvE related encounter stuff. So raids, fractals, high end fractals.
Not raids as much, because raids has the specific limitations put on them that don't allow a lot of this. There is some in fractals. There's still this in fractals because there's a broken part of fractals itself that needs to be fixed.
Okay.
That this doesn't affect, but it definitely affected some like speed running in dungeons and things like that, and open world and some fractals. It and definitely world versus world. Not everybody in world versus world, but certain people in world versus world knew how to take advantage of this. And when you've got 2 squads of 100 people all doing this, you can't tell me that doesn't have an effect on your server stability.
Literally 2 squads of 100 people fighting each other affects server stability. So people then doing extra stuff on top of that, it's not going to be great. But
so getting into explaining what it actually is. So let's say you're out in the open world, right? And you just finished like this heart, and you want to run to that event over there, right? You're using greatsword and dual axes on your warrior. You want to run to that event over there. You don't have a mount. You're going to swap on a warhorn, blow it, get the speed buff, swap off the warhorn. Again, this is completely unequipping it, not just weapon swap, and you still have that speed buff. That sounds innocuous because it mostly is, and this is part of what their rollback is. But let's take that and let's compound on it with build templates and things like that, and other types of buffs. Let's say I go into a dungeon. My build template 1 is all like boon focused gear that gives me the best duration and the best stacks of boon, right? And then I have certain weapon selections as well. So I will equip that gear, blast these fields and do this thing to get me all these boons, switch to another weapon set, do it again to get me all these other boons, and then immediately swap to a different weapon set to be in my weapon and armor set to now be in my DPS gear, but I've still got all of those boons with the extended time and duration and everything from the old armor set that I no longer have equipped, and I can now run in, and I've gotten myself like max duration and boons of everything, and I can run in and basically cheese through entire mechanics and scenarios because I'm just blowing it up before it has the chance to do anything.
What are you doing?
I don't know what happened.
I clicked on the credits. So it swapped to the credits for a brief second. I apologize, chat.
Yeah, and ZeKrioX bringing up certain unintended things are good, right? So they're trying to fix cases like that, because let's be honest, That's an unintended effect that breaks down the integrity of my mechanics that I've made.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It just basically ignores them. And it also does have an effect on server stability. Again, we're not talking about lag, we're talking about server stability. If I go into a dungeon fight, a fractal fight, anything, and fractals, it's easier if you do it with multiple people, and you can still do it kind of. I think they need to fix this further, but controversial opinions. If I go into and I literally blow up, the tier 100 CM fractal in 10 seconds, he doesn't get to cycle through all his phases. But the server is trying to cycle through those phases and breaking when he reaches those percentage marks.
Mm-hmm.
And that is having a net negative effect on the total overall performance of the game. Not just you in that fractal, not just you in that dungeon. When you compound that is to more and more people doing this. Yes, that net negative effect may only be a 1% server performance effect. But let's be honest, we can't tackle the greatest effect on server performance. You know what that is? People playing the game.
Just people existing while online.
You can't just say, oh, this is small. No, because most things that are going to have an effect that are unintended and that we can't actually fix are small. They're only going to have a 1% or a less than 1% effect, and they seem very small. But when you do that 10 times, suddenly your server performance has improved 10%, and that's a much bigger deal. So yes, this and it's on its own might be kind of small, but overall it is a positive, I think. And I again, I think they need to go further in certain areas, but I think the compromise they came up with that we'll discuss here in a moment is good. I think it's an improvement on what we had before.
Now, the thing I was thinking of is a completely different angle from that. For like this, because the server stability is a fantastic thing. It's necessary. We need to make sure that these things are maintained. The other thing is, what if they just accepted the fact that people did this? Like, people are using the mechanics of our game, and they're doing this, so we have to design around it. Well, now, every encounter that they design for raids or any new fractals that comes out is going to be made with the assumption that you're pre-stacking, abusing these kinds of mechanics. Which means that somebody going into this, not knowing how to do that, not knowing that that's a thing, not having the, keybinds set up to cycle through these gear sets and build sets, means they are inherently at a disadvantage. Which, to use World of Warcraft as an example, hey Arlie, when's the last time you raided without, like, a certain subset of mods?
You can't. Like, they build the good encounters with you to do them like that. Like, I mean, you could, but no. In fact, the World of Warcraft mod devs have said that the reason that they have been able to make harder and harder fights all the time is because of the bots that are available.
Like deadly boss, except for that one, I can't remember. What was the one that used simple geometry to defeat raid encounters?
Oh, I forget what it was called, but that one was like predicting where the safe spots would be.
Yeah.
So there's a balance, of letting you know something's coming up, but telling you this is definitely the safe spot is two different.
Yeah, I know that video game development is a little bit different, but all of development has some similarities. And there's something that I've heard said and that I agree with is you want to balance around like player actions. You do not want to create mechanics around player actions. Once you fall into that trap, you fall into World of Warcraft or Elder Scrolls Online's trap, where they are creating mechanics and balancing around the fact that people are animation canceling and doing this thing, and it's a much bigger deal in a game like that because it's all the way up to like a 20 to 30% DPS increase. So there are people that are playing the game on the way it was originally intended and designed to be, that literally cannot complete content now because they've started to design that content around this new way that people started playing, or this new mod that came out and things like that. So as a designer, when you see things like this and it's having that big of an effect, you usually want to try to dial that back and maintain the integrity of your mechanics and of your original design. Again, sometimes unintended effects just add to the fluidity or fun of the game, and they won't break the integrity of your mechanics. And I think that's where this compromise comes in, and ZeKrioX picked that up as well. It's really it's a weighing of options. You know what I mean? Like this is definitely like the compromise means that now instead of like let's just I don't know, I'm gonna throw out a random number. Let's say if they removed everything like they originally planned, this would have had a 1.5% increase in stability on the servers, right? Now they're compromising, and this will instead have a 1.2 or 3% increase, right? So we're losing a little bit of stability on the servers, but we're allowing this fun that
Right.
in the so it's a balance. Like, is this fun and is this fluidity worth that loss in stability, right? And for some people, all of it is, and they think this change shouldn't happen at all. I'm not one of those people. Clearly, Arena that is not of that mind either. So,
I was gonna say one of the a similar change that they've made in the past is so back when the game first came out, the meta in dungeons a lot was everybody, no matter what your spec was, stack up on the boss, and just blow them up really fast. Like playing at range was severely discouraged. You were in pugs and stuff, they would literally yell at you if you were at range. They wanted everybody to stack right on the bosses and blow them up. So ArenaNet made some changes, not that didn't destroy the everybody stacking up. That's still viable, but like they made it things that encourage people to play different styles and be able to do things so that it wasn't so greatly encouraged, because originally it was out of balance. Like it was way easier for pretty much all of the bosses if you just stood on them and did that. So it's the same kind of thing, I think. Their compromise isn't completely removing the gameplay, but it's making it less like, oh my god, you really need to do this. Magni.
That's him.
He looks so
hello,
happy.
pupper.
He's the boy. Hi, buddy. But yeah, and what was it? Line of like 5 guardian parties for dungeons going in and just line of warding and like having themselves tucked in a corner where they just because bosses weren't able to just walk over it at the time.
Yeah, there were a lot of exploits of like standing in specific spots that were safe.
Well, then ZeKrioX brought up like standing on a lamppost in WoW. Like I don't know about that. But there was.
I don't remember that one.
There
are things like that though.
But I remember the boxes at Golem Mark II.
Mm-hmm.
Like completely ignore all of the mechanics, equip a ranged weapon, and just sit there and auto attack, and you will win.
You know where there was a lamppost thing? When Fractals first came out and you had Mossman in that one, if you went up on the side so you come in and go off to the right, there was a post that you could hop up and jump on, and everybody got up on that post. You could DPS him down without him being able to attack you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like it's about maintaining a balance between the integrity of your mechanics and letting your players play and have fun with the tools that you give them.
Right.
You can't go too far in one direction because limitations breed fun. If you can do anything, the game becomes boring. Let's just go to dungeons. Everybody wants to talk about dungeons right now because this affected the speedrunners a lot, right? I get that. You want to cheese through and speedrun things. Speedrunning is all about glitches. But if you play a raw explorable right now, and you go up against Giganticus Lupicus, he's an interesting fight. He has 3 different phases. They're very interesting. He has mechanics that you have to interact with or you will die. But that isn't what you're told anymore. What you're told if you ask about that fight now is, here's how you cheese it and blow it up.
Yeah.
That is not maintaining the integrity of that dungeon and that fight. And if we start designing everything like that, this game, people talk about the longevity of this game and in-game, keeping people around in the game and things like that. it's going to die really quick if we allow this kind of stuff to persist.
Yeah.
Or we just start designing around that type of stuff.
I was gonna say, I'm on the very out unpopular opinion because I feel like they shouldn't have made the compromise. Like,
well, then let's specify the compromise that was made here. I'll just skip through a bunch of the reasoning that they gave here. However, like any change of this nature, there's a balance to strike. As creators of the game, we need to evaluate the changes we make, and not only how they protect the intent and integrity of the game, but how they impact you, our players. Guild Wars 2's combat is fast and fluid, as is the experience of exploring and traversing the game world. The last thing we want to do is introduce extra friction that diminishes the fun spots where Guild Wars 2 really shines. We think it's safe to say that with these changes there's a whole lot of essential good, but some of it is a step too far, providing less improvement than it does risk of negative impact. Removal of buffs and boons on changing your equipped weapon is one element that is more likely to accidentally impact normal play. Likewise, there are specific boons that are not necessary to clean up, as they generally only increase the joy of movement around the game world. As a result, for our next scheduled update on 9/21, we are looking at the following refinements related to this. Status reset will no longer occur when changing an equipped weapon from your inventory or hero panel. Status reset will no longer remove the swiftness boon, and status reset will no longer remove the Aegis boon. And then also the Special Forces training area will now automatically reapply your selected boons if they are lost until you have reset them at the console. That's specifically for the raid training area where you can just tell the zone to give me all of the buffs.
yeah.
And there's another smaller effect under that affects World versus World. I say smaller because
we will continue.
I didn't bullet point it, but it's actually a big effect on World versus World that I think is a huge positive.
Wait a second. We will continue to evaluate boons and buffs that are removed by the reset and update as necessary in future patches. In the near term, we are adding stealth to buffs removed when you change traits or templates, as we believe this will be a positive change to the competitive environment in World versus World gameplay. I would have thought that would have been added in the very beginning, no matter what. Because,
right?
like, Thief with, like, a stealth spec can have a ton of stealth.
I think it's because of how things are delineated in the game, within the game. Mm-hmm. So, like, I'm not sure stealth is the same thing as a boon. Okay. You get what I'm saying? So that they're going to have to design around this. But yeah, it was definitely like thieves and scrappers could, like, have a, switch into a build and, like, stealth the entire freaking squad, and then immediately switch out of that build and they could run in and blow someone up with other pre-stacking and stuff as well. So it was definitely having a unintended effect on that competitive environment. So I think that's an improvement, most definitely.
As much as I like that, like, I'm not a huge... So you brought up the example of the warrior swapping to a warhorn for swiftness at the start of this conversation.
So, I think we need to be more careful with our wording, and I messed up and did it as well. Let's say warrior changing, because he's not swapping. Weapon swapping is a mechanic, and this doesn't affect that at all. He's changing. Right. He's completely unequipping one weapon and equipping another.
Yes.
Sorry.
No, you have a point,
because there's a lot of confusion on Reddit and other discussions about this where people are like, talking about weapon swapping, and that's not what this is.
It is weapon switching.
There's a big difference between, like, ideally in my brain, like, it makes sense to, if you have a warhorn, you use that skill and then you swap, so you still have it equipped, but it's not your active weapon. I don't see why you would lose that. But if you did that and then you completely unequip the weapon, that makes more sense to me why you would lose that buff.
And that was a
different thing.
Yeah, that was the old change, and that is the change with all the other buffs now. But that won't be the case for swiftness, and actually that won't be the case for any buffs now, because they're saying they're leaving it in for the inventory panel.
Yeah,
they're they are taking out. Basically, they're almost reverting it back to, almost, not quite, because this still does make some changes back to how it was when the game originally launched. That most people didn't know about this unintended effect. But they are removing most of the compounding issues that templates put on top of this.
Well, and that's the thing that, like, is frustrating to me, and why I feel like they shouldn't have made this compromise, because to me, just thinking about it, it doesn't make sense. And thinking as a new player coming in, like, how would you ever figure that out? Like, is there something in the game that points you to that? Is it just something you have to stumble on, or somebody specifically has to tell you to do it? If it's like stumble on, it depends on what the odds of stumbling on, that could be good. But if somebody literally has to tell somebody to figure out to use this thing, that feels like a bad mechanic.
Yeah. Like anytime where you have to like basically, so I will say the one thing I always think of when I see stuff like this is, do you guys remember the game Brutal Legend?
Mm-hmm.
I never played it, but I do remember it.
Okay,
Yes.
so there was a multiplayer in it that was, it was a very weird kind of RTS thing going on, but there was an achievement in the game called 6 Degrees of Schaefer. And Tim Schafer of Double Fine was the only person who started with this achievement. And you got the achievement by playing someone who had the achievement.
Oh, okay.
So this kind of stuff, effectively the only way you find out about it is through like cultural osmosis by playing the game or existing in online spaces that talk about the game. Like, originally, I had no idea what combo fields were. I had no idea what the, like, when I started playing the game, combo fields, you found out what combo fields were by playing the game and seeing people like, do this, blast fire fields, and I'm like, what? Look at your tooltips. It says the thing, and I'm like, what?
I was going to say, although on that one, I would say there were breadcrumbs to lead you toward it, because all the combo fields, if you looked at their thing, they had the little puzzle pieces,
Right.
and like there's the tool tips. So like you could work through to figure it out. But
right. It's not a perfect example. I will give you that. It's not a perfect example, but it is one of those things where it's just like, I've seen call outs for squads in WVW to drop water fields and throw down blasts for AoE healing.
Mm-hmm.
Like might stacking for fire fields, like that kind of stuff. Like, it's something you don't experience until like you either start digging into the game and like really wondering what the tooltips are. Like, I still don't know what some of the combos are, like what will necessarily trigger what combos. But this kind of like, I remember a Wooden Potatoes video a long time ago, and this was before the Elementalist scepter changes that made Dragon's Tooth targetable.
Mm-hmm.
Where he was talking about like swapping your focus out so you could get the wall of fire, so that you could then start laying down blasts in it. And he had like his inventory panel open and off to the side, so he could like right click or like double click to swap the weapons out. So he'd swap to a focus for his offhand, do a thing, and then swap it back out again, just so he could stack a whole bunch of fire fields.
Mm-hmm.
And I just like, I remember watching that and I'm like, that doesn't seem like a lot of fun to me. Like, and I'll admit fun is subjective. I'm not going to tell people what is and isn't fun, but like the idea of manipulating my inventory in an action combat game seems really counterintuitive. So while when the example that 7-Bit brought up way at the start of the warrior going into his inventory and getting the warhorn out, blowing the warhorn for swiftness, and then re-equipping whatever they had previously, seems fairly innocuous, but it leads to weird shit like that where like you're swapping out to gain access to skills and then
Yeah, it can add, for the people that understand it, some fluidity to the gameplay, because you're just cycling one thing to the next faster and easier, right? But it's also, as Arlie said, an unintuitive design. I've seen some people call it intuitive, but it's not. Intuitive means that I can intuit it, right? So this, like, break bars is intuitive design. I can learn break bars just by reading what I have in the game and what it is showing me, right? There's nothing in the game that leads me to this being the case. I have to just discover it from someone telling me or just by pure accident. So it's not intuitive. And while it may add some fluidity, again, we come back to that balance. And yeah, people are never going to agree on this subject, I don't think, because there's some that just don't care what effect it has on server stability or design mechanics or integrity and things like that. And some people think, well, that's fine, just design around it and make, so that's. But I think overall this is a positive direction we're moving in, and I think there's still more that needs to be done. It's not a perfect change.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about Melee, ZeKrioX. People who harp on Melee, like, okay, so this kind of is a related concept of the idea of a solved game. Like, wave dashing was cool in Melee, where you could, like, it combined iframes along with forward momentum effectively for people who have no idea what the concept is. But Melee was a game that was never updated. Like people like to hold up Melee as like this pinnacle of the fighting games. Like, people like Melee tournaments, but the problem is Melee is solved. There are characters that are worse than other characters, and once you get to a certain level of skill, there's no you can't overcome the people who are good with those characters. It's just not a thing you can do because the game is solved. Like, they are playing characters that are literally better than half the roster. But
I'm really glad you brought up the concept of solved game, because I think this plays into what we're talking about completely.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to say something extremely controversial here. Arlie, I know you still play the game. There's nothing wrong with it, but World of Warcraft is a solved game.
Well,
you
yes.
get gear that you need, and you follow the instructions that have already been solved for you by following these DBM and other things like that. This would become a solved game if we started designing our mechanics around this and just let the integrity slip. And this is Arena ensuring that Guild Wars 2 does not become a solved game. And that is a positive. Does it have negative effects on some people? Yes. Most positive things do. There is no such thing as a 100% positive change in such an environment. But I think the good outweighs the bad, and it keeps us further away from becoming a solved game.
I do think that... go ahead, Arlie.
I was going to say, it plays into another issue that World of Warcraft has that's right along those lines. I've talked about with some of the devs, is part of the problem in World of Warcraft is there's so much testing and experiment and like groupthink on the way you play classes and specs. Like, there is a right way to do it. And once it gets accepted that like you play a certain class a certain way, that may not actually be the best way to play the class for every person for a variety of reasons. But because it's accepted that that's the way, people don't accept people doing other things. And we see that a little bit with Guild Wars 2 with like the whole meta community and stuff. But that it's a much smaller problem than it is in World of Warcraft.
Well, I remember we did an entire story on a guy on Reddit who was getting like kicked out of fractal groups for playing Power Reaper.
Yeah.
And he was out DPSing the entire group by a mile. So
yeah, there's going to be that mentality, and there's going to be metas in any game that you play, right? But when you start sacrificing the integrity of your design and start designing around said meta, which games have fallen into, which I think World of Warcraft has fallen into, not always, but they have. Elder Scrolls has fallen into. That's when you start getting closer and closer to being that solved game. You can, it's great for a meta to exist, but you can't design and balance around that, because then that becomes the only thing, and you don't have this variety and this change. And yeah, I agree, ZeKrioX. I 100% agree with the changes. I think there still needs to be more. I agree with the compromise as well, but I do empathize with the people that this is a net negative for. I understand this sucks, but I think we have to look at it realistically as like, balancing the good versus the bad. And I empathize with you, but I think overall this had to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's like that's the one thing like that I worry about is the design standpoint. Like we've talked so much about like the way this could affect it. Like this would be something that would very quickly overwhelm. Like I can't imagine now getting into World of Warcraft, just picking up the game and thinking that the UI I have is the only UI that I have available.
Oh God.
Yeah, exactly. Like they have stopped developing a good UI because they allowed add-ons to exist.
Mm-hmm.
Take someone who's barely ever played a video game or an MMO and put them into World of Warcraft, and like people complain about like what Guild Wars 2 does and doesn't teach you. Throw them in the World of Warcraft and have them do their first dungeon and other things.
Oh
It
God.
tells you nothing about like threat mechanics, healing, targeting, like leashes, all these different things that are like common knowledge and that they just designed around people understanding. So
I don't think threat is ever mentioned other than but
okay, so with the last expansion, they completely revamped the new player experience.
Okay.
So there is now a new island that all new players go for levels 1 through 10. And as a continuing player, you can either start there or you can go to the original starting zones. The new island actually does a decent job of teaching you basic things like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's covered there.
I did not know
But
that.
it's
I'm glad they added that.
yeah, it's the problem is, and also that island ends with a dungeon. It's not really a dungeon, but it's kind of a dungeon. And you have NPCs who fill the healer and tank roles.
It's a
So you
dungeon
can
with training
learn,
wheels.
like, yeah, basically, and other people can join. The problem becomes more that you do that 1 through 10, and then 11 through 60, you're leveling up. You don't really have to interact with those things again until max level, because you can level the whole way without ever doing another dungeon, or you can do a dungeon, but it's so easy even as a leveling person that none of the mechanics or anything matter.
Yeah.
So
I will admit that in Guild Wars 2, they do a very poor job of explaining, like, because even in, like, they explain the concept of threat, but there's no way to, there's no visual representation of threat in World of Warcraft, unless you grab, I can't remember what the common DPS meter was. It was my third mod in my list of rebuilding my mods list, because it was...
Yeah. Oh, no,
Omen.
that's...
Was it Omen?
Omen was a WoW one.
Yeah,
but...
well, that's the one I'm talking about, but, like...
Okay.
Like, I would need a threat meter in World of Warcraft. I knew threat was a thing. I knew it was mentioned on Righteous Fury on my Paladin, because I had to have that buff up, which I understand now it's rolled into just being that specialization. You have the increased threat, so there's no missing your buff, which is disappointing to me, because I would turn it off sometimes in some encounters to mess with people. Yes, I was that tank in public dungeons, but like, Guild Wars 2 has a threat system, and the most common is the enemies will go after the person with the highest toughness. But there's no real management of threat. Like, thankfully, on encounters where it matters, like Slothosaur, it's like, you're the focus. You get the giant pop-up that says, hey, the giant sloth mutant is going to punch you in the face now. There's a problem there with, like, Veil Guardian, where you're not told that Veil Guardian is a toughness tank fight. I believe
there's
Matthias is
Guild Wars
one.
2 is not without these issues as well. It does have it, but it's much more limited in Guild Wars 2 that they don't have these things be a little bit more intuitive. And I think it could be added where they can make it a little bit more intuitive, and
I
it's
suppose
it's not all the same because different raids will have different types of tanking mechanics. The most common is the toughness, yes,
Yeah.
but certain raids it is a little bit different.
I suppose the benefit there is I don't think there's a single boss that can one shot you with a single like auto attack in Guild Wars 2, even if you are literally the squishiest possible build. Like I don't think
Yeah.
Veil Guardian is just going to one shot the.
Yeah, I think there are mechanics that could, but they're not the opening ones, so you could go in and figure it
And
out
then
before that
you'd
happens.
figure out like, okay, why is this boss literally only following one person? So, and ZeKrioX, I don't know. I know, Deo, we should be able to reflect bears. Also, it's great to hear from you, Deo. I hope your back is doing better.
Hi, Deo.
But like,
Abaddon did nothing wrong.
he's right. He said it. He put art for it in the Guild Wars 2 channel, Deo. It's very important. It's fantastic art of Abaddon. But with ZeKrioX, I don't know if taunt can be more widely available with the way it's designed in Guild Wars 2. If you had stronger access to taunt in such a way that it bypassed break bars and forced break bar enemies to target you, that becomes a completely different thing, I think. So I don't think we could have like an implementation of taunt in Guild Wars 2 that exists in like World of Warcraft, because it doesn't fit because we don't have threat. But I think we're getting more along the lines of like generic game mechanics, and we're pushing into some after show territory here. So do we have any final thoughts on this whole thing before I throw it over to outro?
The last thing I would say about this subject is there was a lot of like vitriol and like toxicity around it. Like everyone, let's be more generous in our interactions and assumptions of one another. Just because they disagree with us uh, doesn't mean that we have to revert to this us versus them mentality. And there's a lot of people that did misunderstand the change, but there's reasons behind that too. We don't have to, it didn't have to be as bad as it was, I don't think. Let's be more generous in our interactions with one another, people.
Yes, definitely. Because like, to quote a very good meme video, it's just game. Why you have to be mad?
Oh, I love that.
But, ladies and gentlemen, that will be it for us this evening, which means it is outro time, which means I can say, Arlie, where can they find you?
I can be found on Twitter and Instagram at Arlie82. Yay!
Awesome, awesome. And Brian, where can they find you?
I can be found on Twitter and Instagram as well at 7BitBrian. I'm 7BitBrian on everything. So if you find that on YouTube and Twitch as well, that is me. I don't stream right now, though I'm starting soon, and YouTube videos as well.
Awesome, awesome. And you can find my dumb face on Twitter at MalThanusMMO. You can also find me live on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Usually, it's not going to be this Thursday because vacation, and I'm going to visit my in-laws, and they don't have internet that can support streaming. And then next Saturday, I won't be here for Talking Skritt, so there's that. So the next time you're going to see me is Tuesday, when we're going to do Public Marionette and then Guild Missions to make it a core Guild Wars 2 night for the fun of it. It'll be great. So, ladies and gentlemen, hope to see you on Tuesday. And as always, have a fantastic evening, folks. Good night, everybody.